Now we can write this another way if our variable happens to be u. Okay, so the variable that we're working with is always in the denominator. Okay, and to do the derivative of this, we would of course change this radical sign to an exponent. That makes it easier when we take the derivative. So we bring down the 1/2 and we take away 1, which gives us negative 1/2. Okay, so in your groups, I'd like you to do a warm-up and do d dx of x to negative 2/3. So go ahead and do that problem. And don't worry about the negative. We'll just keep it on top while we're just reviewing this. Okay, so let's see how you did. We're going to bring down the exponent, which is negative 2/3, and then we're going to minus 1. Minus 3/3, that's a little trick I showed you based on the denominator. So we have negative 2/3, x to negative 5/3. Okay, then we saw a type of problem like this. If we had f of x equals 7 to x to the 5th, okay? And we're asked to take the derivative of that. We first said, well, let's change this and let's put the exponent on top, so we change the sign. Okay, now we can take the derivative. Negative 5 times 7 is negative 35. And then we minus 1, which gives us negative 6. All right. We talked about also that if we took, let's say, f of x equals 5, we said the derivative of a constant equals 0. Now, let's see why that's the case. We showed why mechanically. Let's show why by looking at an example of a graph. Okay, so let's say we have the equation y equals 3. What would that look like on a graph? 1, 2, 3. This is the equation of the line y equals 3. So you can think of this as f of x equals 3. Now what is the slope of this line? The slope is 0, right? Slope of this line is 0. So f prime of x, which is the slope of the tangent line at a point, is 0. Okay? So what did we talk about so far? We know that if we have y equals some constant, y prime is going to equal 0. We also talked about, I'm going to write over here, if y equals something like 4x, we said y prime equals x. 4, sorry. And we showed why that was the case. So we're going to say if y equals some constant times the variable x, then y prime is just going to equal that constant. All right, let's go further into another property. This is called the sum different properties. Sum difference properties. Okay, and that is if capital F of x equals f of x plus g of x, then the derivative of f of x, capital F of x, is f prime of x plus g prime of x. Okay, so that's the sum difference property. Now let's utilize that in a problem. Here's an example. Let's say we have y equals 3x squared plus 4x plus 7. We wanted to find the derivative. What we do is just find the derivative of each term. So this becomes 6x plus 4 plus 0. And there's our answer. Okay? So now I'd like you to do one in your group. Let's say f of x equals 4x cubed plus 5x squared plus 3x plus 10. Go ahead and find f prime of x. Okay, so using the sum difference properties, we can take the derivative of each term. So the derivative here is 12x squared. Derivative of 5x squared is going to be 10x. Derivative of 3x is 3, and derivative of 10 is 0. Okay, great. Let's go on. I'm going to give you a little bit of review on something. So recall, if we have the square root of x, that's the same thing as x to 1/2. If we have the cube root of x, that's the same thing as x to 1/3. So the root is always in the denominator. So continuing forward, if we have the 4th root of x to the 7th, this is the root, so this is the denominator, and then we put the 7 right on top. Okay, so now if you have a problem like this in WebAssign, where you have f of x equals 4 square root of x to the 5th, before we can begin to do f prime of x, we're going to change this into an exponent. So we have 4x to 5/2. Remember, the root is the denominator. Now once we got there, we can take the derivative. We're going to keep our 4, bring down our 5/2, so times 5/2, and then we're going to minus 1. 5/2 minus 2/2. All right, now this 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. And we have 5 minus 2, 3/2. Now something about WebAssign, if you start where you have a root, they want you to finish where you have a root. So this is WebAssign. If you start with a root, they want you to end with a root. So we're going to go back now and change this to root form. This is a 2 on the bottom, so it's a square root, and we leave the 3 on the inside. And there's our answer. Okay, so let's do a couple for you to do now. All right, so we have, here's an example. Let's see, f of x equals 10 cube root of x to the 4th. Find the derivative f prime of x. What would that equal?